have to pass the from the private development down there. Yes. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the January 18th, 2011 Washougal City Council meeting and ask you to please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mrs. Forsberg, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Costin?
Here.
Councilmember Russell?
Here.
Councilmember McDaniel? Here. Councilmember Delavar?
Present.
Councilmember Greenlee?
Here.
Councilmember Morris?
Here.
And Councilmember Shoemaker?
Here.
Thank you. Are there any amendments to the agenda this evening?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would like to pull the special council meeting minutes, item number 2, from the consent agenda.
Okay. Any other items?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull Agenda Bill 7-11, set public hearing, reduce temp sign review planning application fee.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to pull Agenda Bill 9-11, item 11, for comment.
Okay. So far, I've got items 2, 9, and 11. Any additional ones? Any additional amendments to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll take those in the order that they're in under new business after item number 3 of new business. That brings us to the point in the meeting for any comments from the public for the council. Anyone that would wish to address the council this evening? Mr. Anderson.
Tom Anderson, 740E. I understand that the city either has or is about to implement a system that allow people to pay their utility bills online. I was wondering if there's also going to be a number that one can call and do that with.
Jennifer, can you answer that?
We're currently not taking payments over the phone because of the area that the phone would be answered in. Repeating the credit card number back would not be secure, so we don't want to have credit card numbers being repeated over the phone.
Tom, does that answer the question? Or?
I know that some of the companies that collect payments for you have a toll-free number that you call there. You know, that company rather than the city.
I think I saw Jennifer make a note. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. That's okay. At least the transcriber later will be able to hear you.
Okay, I'm Doug Gilson, 11328 7th Street in Washougal. I've got a problem which may be trivial to you people, but we have a problem with free-running cats. Huh. And they come in their yard. Of course, you can't keep them out. We're in a fence yard, but you can't keep them out of the fence. They chase the birds. They have made their areas along our house, particularly on our bedroom window, if we have big overhangs, is dry. Take them into their litter box. Come and turn our security lights on like at 11 o'clock at night in the back and stuff. So it gets real aggravating, and the people don't seem to care. I took cats, I caught some, live trapped them, and took them to the Humane Society. And a couple of days later, I got a knock at the door of the animal control officer for Washougal. Said, I can't do that. He said, you can be charged a misdemeanor, given a ticket, cited a citation for misdemeanor for doing that. Now, I've got a copy of the code for Washougal, and I can't find that any place. I've asked at the police station at least twice, been down there 3 times. I still haven't seen anything. If there's a law that says that, I talked to Humane Society also, and they were unaware of anything. If there's a law that says that, I'd like to have a copy, very much like to have a copy.
Not a problem. I bet we can get somebody to give you a call back and go through that item for you.
And the other thing, if there isn't a law, I'd like to see something added to the animal code on free roaming cats. And I wrote a little thing up, short, and then I'll get out of here. And any cat continuously straying from its owner property into the yard of another property owner or renter may be live trapped by that resident and taken directly to the Humane Society facility within Clark County. I'd like to see that put into the animal code to eliminate some of the questions of what you can do.
Mr. Gilson, do you have a copy of that we can borrow?
You can have it.
Excellent.
It may seem like a small problem, but it's very aggravating.
It's one that does surface every couple of months throughout the city, there's no doubt, so.
Well, that surfaces a lot, and there's an awful lot of free roaming cats around Wash River.
Thank you, Mr. Gilson. Yes, Don.
Don Bolin, 32934 Southeast 20th Street. I read something, so I had to come and talk to you folks again. You know, I haven't given you my whole thesis, but I do believe you pay people for the ability to deal with ambiguity, so that's why I'm bringing the problem to you folks. I read the annexation, and I was concerned about the process because I looked at it, and it says expenditures to the city, 0, budget 0. Everything was 0. And I saw no revenue. And as you know, when I look at things, I look at them from a business point of view. And when somebody comes in and says, hey, you're acquiring something, it's come to the city, or to your corporation, one of the things I would have expected would a cost-benefit analysis. And when I look at this, the only thing that hits me is a 0, and I have a feeling in back of that we're thinking, well, gee whiz, there's going to be property taxes, so it's going to be free revenue, which I've never been able to find in business where I get something totally for nothing. Not only that, one of the things I think, if I listen to the budget right, some of the revenue that's being taken in by the city is not covering its expenses. And if that's true, why would you want to go out and sell your lost leader? And that's, you know, that changes. But I guess to summarize, the point I'd like to make is that in the process, I would think you should have a cost-benefit analysis on here's the cost to the city, here's the revenue. Because otherwise, I think you can get into situations where, well, we need a new water tank, or we need this, or we need that. And I'm not saying you should stop that. What I'm saying is I would hope that you would look at a better, that's a bad word, I mean just a different cost analysis process when you're acquisitioning things into the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bolin. Yes.
Good evening, Nettie DeRoche, 4050 Addy Street. And just a couple of quick things. For the gentleman with the cat problem, at the animal shelter we have a matching grant right now. So if you maybe want to talk to your neighbors, we have $2,000 available to help people spade and neuter their cats. And if we can educate people to do that, that would help eliminate the problem. So you may want to contact the shelter or contact your neighbors, and we'd be happy to assist them with that. Another quick thing, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to discuss just for a moment, giving the audience the opportunity to not only speak at the beginning of the meeting, but a lot of times things are said at the council meeting that we all have comments or ideas or would like to make a remark on. And I appreciate you limiting the time, but many times after the meeting there are things that lots of people in the group would like to talk about. And just third, really quickly, for the last year that I have been attending the meetings, I have noticed from time to time, and I know we're all busy people, but I've noticed that council members come in and they leave. And the message that that sends to me as a voting citizen is that you guys are someone here is too busy to make the commitment to stay for the entire meeting. And if you vote and you get up and leave, that really sends a message to me. And I know that Mr. Russell did that last week, and I know that Mr. Greenlee has left on occasion. I did hear Mr. Greenlee make a comment when he left, but Mr. Russell has left on several occasions, and it does send a bad message. So, you know, if you're using your cell phone or you're using your computer and you're reading the paper, it just doesn't come off very good to the citizens. So I wanted to make you guys aware of that. Maybe you have legitimate excuses or reasons that you don't want to share with people why you're here, but it does happen a lot, and it is noticed. And I just ask for a little bit more respect to the community to put your time in. Okay?
Thank you, Nettie. Yes.
Larry Keister, Washougal, Washington. I was misquoted in the minutes, and I appreciate Councilman Delavar bringing the fact up that the minutes were incorrect. But because I probably won't have an opportunity to explain what I said, I would like to say it now. You know, you guys are kind of running this like a soap opera. If I miss a meeting, I miss out on something. But because you've got these, you know, you only let us speak at the beginning of a meeting, I'm kind of forced to attend all your meetings. Not that I don't enjoy them, but that's, you know, just want to bring that to your attention. The public comments and questions that had been previously at the beginning and at the end of the workshops, and the public to hear the process and the discussion was kind of the indicator of what I have said. It's what I've been saying for the last 6 months. But because I spent the day of the workshop in Underwood battling, trying to keep windmills out of the scenic area, I was tired the night that we had the meeting. So I read my comment. And I'm kind of glad that I did, because I have a copy of it. I wasn't really talking about where the comment section was at that particular time. I was talking about the special meeting that was slid in a regular meeting that I really didn't have any idea was coming, nor did, you know, a lot of the other citizens. And then it was moved to a section after the regular public comments, so that eliminated any opportunity for us to voice any comments. My comment was, the City Council is an elected body to represent the citizens of Washougal. By amending the agenda and asking for a vote on an issue after public comments eliminates the citizens' ability to voice our opinion and to provide you with any input. This eliminates, you know, you representing me. So it was the fact that there was a special, you know, there was something slipped in that eliminated my ability or any of the citizens' ability to make any comments. And so I just wanted to get that, you know, that's where I was going. And I'm glad I had my comment. Thank you.
Point of order. Can you respond to that, Mr. Mayor? I don't think sliding in was the appropriate language for that.
No, it certainly from some folks' point of view, though, when we're doing those things on a short timeline, it potentially and obviously could come off that way to some individuals. I had made the decision to call a special meeting as part of or in conjunction with the workshop meeting that evening so that we could get the question of the C-Tran and RTC appointments taken care of for the next upcoming meetings and get those handled. Frankly, I looked at it more as a housekeeping item than anything else, and it was probably my error in not allowing or not asking for public comments as a part of that meeting, because I only saw it as a 5-10 minute portion of another meeting. But technically, it was a separate meeting into itself. We certainly, you know, we have an obligation in any of those, even in emergency meetings that are called within a 24-hour period, to make notification to the newspapers and make it as widely publicized as we can. We did get it into the website. We did notify the media of the special meeting and the nature of the special meeting, since we're prohibited from doing anything other than the topic that we have it for. I believe those went out on Friday of that week. Might have been Thursday, but I believe it was Friday. And it's one of those areas where, unfortunately, we don't have control of the paper and of the newspapers and the media. And the statute that we have before us requires us just to make the media aware of it through our normal processes and make sure that they know of it as soon as possible so that they can decide whether they can get it in or not. But more importantly, for them to be able to be there and be the public's eyes. So those portions were certainly followed, but we're certainly cognizant when we pull that trigger as close as we did to a Monday meeting, even for an item that may be a housekeeping item, that it may catch some folks unaware. And I certainly probably should have addressed that a little bit more as we got into the meeting at the start. So my apologies.
And when you send that out, that has to be sent out. The agenda for that special meeting has to be sent. So that agenda was in the hands of the press. They did know exactly, and we can't deviate from that. Once that agenda's set, it's got to be that agenda for the special meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other members of the public that would like to address the council this evening? Okay. Seeing no others, we will go into the consent agenda. The consent agenda as amended this evening, consisting of the council minutes of January 3, 2011, the workshop minutes of January 10, 2011, the regular accounts payable claims in the amount of $235,696.48, Agenda Bill 1311, a supplemental professional services agreement number 7 with Wallace Engineering on E Street improvement projects, Agenda Bill 4-11, the Washington State Department of Transportation SR 14 widening interchange project. Trevor, what is TB? What is TB?
Turn back.
Turn back. Number 4. Agenda Bill 5-11, the cemetery lot buyback from Dorothy Burchett. Agenda Bill 6-11, the 2011 District Court and Correction rates update. And Agenda Bill 8-11, setting a public hearing for annexation procedures and amendments to the Washougal Municipal Code, Chapters 1.20. What would council's pleasure be?
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that the consent agenda be approved as read.
Seeing no objections, so ordered. Mayor's report, I have 3 or 4 items for you this evening. First one, I would like to make sure and thank all of our city crews, the city staffs, and the residents who assisted on Sunday when we had the heavy rains come from overnight and had some flooding issues within the city. I was fortunate enough, excuse me, I was fortunate enough Sunday morning to tag along with one of our staff members to see how the city actually responds and what we do in those cases and what people are out there doing and that type of stuff. And I was very impressed. Even, I think something that's more telling is even more than me being impressed, our residents, as we went around to different sections of the city, were very impressed. We did some bagging in some areas. There was a number of deliveries of sand, of bags. It was very heartening to pull up to an intersection and see an area where water's going across roadways and coming out of ditches, and there's 30 people standing there and 20 of them have shovels in their hand ready to go when that truck rolls up. So I know I talked to a number of residents throughout the day in some of the trouble areas, and they were very appreciative of the city staff, both from Public Works, streets, stormwater, police, fire. I know everybody was out checking areas and just making sure that we didn't have any other problem areas that we didn't know about yet or that people couldn't get to us about. So that was, it was very wonderful to see. It was good to see that the crews were prepared and ready to go and had contingency plans in place for other stuff as well. So that was a lot of water in a short period of time. I have a feeling there's still some cleanups going on today. Quick items on the retreat this weekend. We will be meeting only on Saturday. We have managed to work the agenda down to a period of time that we believe that we can all be at home enjoying our families on Friday evening. come together on Saturday and pretty much cover everything. If not, those items that are towards the end, we can always put back towards a workshop. So Saturday session only, starting at 9 o'clock in the community room here next to the library. Highlights, I believe we will have some interesting information on some strategic planning that we would like to bring forth to the council and the public. And also, probably even more telling, we should have our 2010 year-end financial results ready to put out. So I think Jennifer's working now with her staff to put those into some projections into 12, 13, and 14, and see what those processes kick out for us as well for some deliberations. So Saturday, 9 o'clock until 5 o'clock, 4:30ish, 5 o'clock, hopefully at the latest, and we'll have a good time. So certainly, if all of you can be there all day, those items are scattered throughout the agenda. One item I want to bring to the council's attention, this is more for information only. We found out this morning we have an EMS rally happening in the city on Thursday afternoon, 3:30 in the afternoon till 5 o'clock at Station 172, the station down at 39th and Evergreen. We didn't get word until this morning it was happening. Apparently, it is a group of individuals. From the email that I got, it went far and wide throughout this entire county. And it's just a rally in support of EMS and continuing services at the level that they're at in Washougal. So I know there have already been some press inquiries. I know the Post-Record had a small article in there this evening. I have instructed the fire chief and the police chief to work with the folks involved and make sure that it's done correctly, appropriately, safely, all those types of things. So if any of you care to be there, Thursday afternoon it will happen. Yes, John?
From the indication that you got, is this a response of us holding the $150,000 in the budget?
I don't believe so, and certainly neither of the cities, and I had some communications back and forth with Camus's administration today, and they weren't aware of it either, so it certainly is nothing coming from any sides there. I know some of the union members have, or are in the mix of what's there. Quite frankly, it's come to us so quickly, I'm not sure what the entire impetus is there in the discussions, but I know there were discussions that I had with some of the union members in regards to the proposed 150, even when we had it in the budget, and there were some questions even from them of whether that was appropriate or not appropriate, back and forth. So I don't believe that that's what's driving it. I believe it's more potentially maybe just a union rallying cry to try and do as much as they can, given the financial health and some of the issues that we've got going with EMS. So,
would it be possible for you to forward the email to council?
You bet. Matter of fact, yeah. Yes, I've got it in email form, so
great.
I've got a copy of it somewhere as well. And then as a follow-up to that as well, I had already started discussions and some communications between Washougal, Camus, and East County Fire and Rescue to start putting together some folks to look at the financial health of that entire service. So it was a very ironic morning. There were things going back and forth quicker than we could send emails. The final items that I have, I know there are some continuing discussions that we'll have on committees and appointments to committees. I would like to make a couple of at least interim council appointments for committees that I wish to make sure meet here in the very short future. The Hotel Motel Tax Advisory Board, I would like to ask Councilman Russell to continue his involvement with that group. Economic Development, the working group that we have with Economic Development, Councilman Greenlee has been involved in that since we started the initiative this last year, and I would ask that he stay involved in that, at least for the short term, and this will make sense here in a minute. Councilman Russell, if you would consent to being a part of that working group as we move forward into some of the final phases of that. And then final one is the city's representative to the Chamber of Commerce, Councilman Russell as well. It's kind of the Councilman Russell's show on the appointments. I didn't ask you about all of those, but they all kind of tied together. So John, if you'd be willing to consent to those, and council is fine with those, I'd like to make those, again, at least as interim appointments as those meetings come up until we get final discussions done on all the other appointments.
I would, and so moved.
Got a motion and a second for those appointments. Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. That is all I have at the moment under mayor's report. Jennifer, do we have any correspondence?
No.
Okay. Council comments? John?
A couple of things. Is there any way that we can, for the future, anytime that there's an emergency like we had with the flooding, this is the second time it's happened since I've been on council that we weren't notified of the ability to come and help. I know there's many of us on the council that would love to have that opportunity to go and to help our neighbors and community if we just knew about it. So if there's any way, or I don't know how we can set something up to where there's an email alert that goes out or something that just says, hey, there's this issue going on right now, that would really be great.
I think we can certainly at least do it through emails and get back for those that see them over the weekends and that type of thing as that one came up, so.
Sure.
You bet.
And then I'd like to address the lady who brought up my absence at the last meeting. Yes, you're correct. I do monthly miss the workshop meeting, which is held the second Monday of each month. I make it for the first hour, and then I must go. One thing that I have found in my public life, and this may not be popular with some people, but my first responsibility is to my family and to my wife, to my children. And it is the one evening out of the week, once a month, that my wife has the ability to get away and to just be with her friends and spend some quality time and relax. And so if I can do my part in coming home an hour early from the meeting to help her do that, that's why I leave. You can check my voting record and my attendance for votes, and it's stellar. But yes, I do leave an hour early for the workshops. Now, to find the information, I usually call Councilman Delavar to find out what happened at the meeting that night, and I also can view the meeting at home on YouTube. So I don't really miss anything other than just being here to be able to participate in that way. But just to answer that, because I know some people probably have the same question that do attend on a regular basis. But that's why I leave the second Monday of each month. Thank you.
Other council comments?
Yes,
Michael?
Mayor.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I have some questions that I am going to ask for clarification with the council. And I apologize for not preparing you guys in advance for this. It has to do with the Finance Committee. It's not really earth-shaking stuff. But my big question that I have about this is there a need, or I should say, is there a description in code or policy that I'm missing somehow, and I'm afraid I haven't seen it yet, where the Finance Committee is required to review all the claims, or is this simply just a tradition that we go through? Are we aware of that?
I believe it used to be in state law.
I know that they have to be, you have to look at least a summary statement so that you can say that you've reviewed claims before everybody approves them with a vote. I think this was the way that at least certain council members, can be in the detail so that if there are some discrepancies, then they can bring them forward and advise the rest of the council.
Right. Well, the thing that strikes me about this is that I really do appreciate the ability to be able to go through all the claims, and that is a great ability. But what disturbs me about this, being on the Finance Committee for the first time now, is that if we don't have a hard, fast criteria for saying, yes, this is appropriate, no, this isn't appropriate, or I sense fraud, or whatever, it makes it very difficult to say that I sign off on it. And That's kind of my issue with that. Also, I see that there is, I mean, it is somewhat redundant in that we have the department heads that sign off on it, and at least one more layer, if I understand correctly, that reviews the claims. And to put the council members through a lot of, I mean, the very large bills and eye-opening bills as well, and to say, yes, this is all legit, to me, that's a very difficult thing for me to sign off on. I do very much appreciate our ability to be able to come in and take a look at it, and I fully support council members doing that, by all means. Another thing that's conflicting with me is my schedule is just not able, I mean, just not working out for Fridays. I'm gonna have to find some sort of solution to that one way or the other. But if we don't have, I mean, if we are not required to have the council have this finance committee other than simply just having a finance committee, my question to the council is whether or not we really are prepared to say this is a defensible procedure for the council to sign off on the AP claims. Anyway, I'm just raising the question and hoping that other council members have some input as well, or maybe we need to do some research and find out some more policy issues before we have the full discussion, and I'll leave that to others to decide.
I think we can definitely research the question of where it comes from. I have a feeling since we've got the requirement for the signatures at the bottom of the summary printouts and that type of stuff, that there's something somewhere says we need to do it. I know certainly from my seat, and I'm sure from your seats as well, being able to see that detail and be that check and balance and that type of stuff too. And I certainly, I have no reason to ever believe that a department head or a city staff member or anybody else that is putting anything through for a legitimate claim, that it would be anything other than a legitimate claim. But also in my simple way of thinking, we're all on the same side of the house. The staff are the same as the administration, same as the department heads, and all on the executive side. And having that check and balance from the legislative side, I think, is a healthy, if not required and necessary item. But we could certainly make sure and address the questions of the origin of where it is, and then certainly have more discussions on how we do that, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely don't want it to be laborious on anybody, but we certainly want to make sure that we're doing everything correctly.
Right, and also I don't want to just be a rubber stamp that just says, yep, this is still Napa Auto Parts, and yep, it's all good, without understanding what would make that charge appropriate or inappropriate. And it is a tremendous amount of information to go through. But I think we've seen in the last few years that there are examples where things can get lost in the minutia, and unless you dig through and really look at it very, very closely and say, here's the contract for this, let's review this, yeah, that's in the contract and it's under budget and so on and so forth, in which it really wouldn't be, I think, in the purview of the council necessarily. So that's why I'm interested in finding out where the council's exact required role is, and then we could discuss the appropriate role. Good, thank you.
Rod?
Councilman Delavar, I don't think I've never seen it that there's a state statute that says we have to, but we've been held accountable by the auditor whenever things went awry, and how come there wasn't check and balances. And even people on this council right now have said, why weren't we looking those bills over? And I think that the citizens made that loud and clear as well, is that the council needs to sign off on those so that there's accountability from the council, not just from the staff. But I've never seen it written that we have to do that, but when the auditors came and pointed out all kinds of things that were in error, they wanted council to be accountable as well for that.
Right, and my point about that specifically is I do understand that, and in fact, when that was all blowing up in our face, I asked a council member about the whole process of reviewing the AP claims and all the bills. And it was, yeah, on some level, it was very eye-opening to hear about the process. On another level, I was glad at that point that I wasn't on the finance committee, so I didn't have to have that responsibility, my name tied to, yes, I signed off on this, and then having to answer, why did I sign off on this? But now that I am on the finance committee, I can't sign off on these things because I can't say legitimately whether they're yes or no. And that's where I'm saying, even though I do want to be held, I want the city to be held accountable to the law and our contracts. The difficult part for me is, do we have the tools and the criteria to do that? I don't know. And so anyway, that's why I bring up discussion. Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment to your comment. And it is an interesting point that you bring up, Councilman Delavar, because I'm sure in other larger cities, it would be impossible for individual council members to go through each individual payable on a weekly basis as we do through the Finance Committee. I'm actually kind of glad we live in a very small city. And it's not just because I'm not happy to give my time, but it is very fortunate that we can take the time to go through the bills and see exactly where the money's going and who it's going to, and if it is indeed correct and if something looks out of place. So, but I can definitely see your point. There are councils all across the nation who are approving payables and they've never seen them. So it is an interesting point, and I would like to do a little more research and find out, exactly what is required and our liability to that.
So as a member of the Finance Committee, I too agree with Jennifer. I know it is laborious, but it does give you you get to have a real understanding of exactly what makes the city tick and some of the expenditures that we're required to have. It's pretty eye-opening. During the last mayor's reign, I did ask a question to legal at MRSC about our liability if we sign on that dotted line every week. And I was told, and I'm sure I still have that email in reference, that unless we knowingly sign that and know that there's some fraudulent activity, that would be the only time that we would be personally liable. If we review claims and they appear to be good and just, then we have no liability as individual council members. But I'll see if I can find that, the specific code reference for that, and that'll at least answer maybe one of your questions. All good ones. Thank you.
Paul?
I served on the Finance Committee the previous 2 years, and I actually got started doing it when Jeff Bivens came to me and said, if you really want to understand what's going on in the city, you need to look at the payables. And so that's the point at which I started it. And I used to spend somewhere between an hour and 2 every week going through almost all of the receipts, even to the point of, one week I would take the LJC feed store and I would look at every one of the receipts and try to make sense of what the expenditure was and why. We're not auditors. We're not trained as auditors, and it is not the expectation under the law that we function as auditors. On the other hand, to actually understand what's going on in the city, you really do need to get down into that level of detail. One of the things that helps a little bit to begin to understand some of what's going on is, as a matter of, I don't even know whether it's law or regulation, the chart of accounts, as it's called, for the city operates under a thing called BARS. And I couldn't tell you what that stands for, except that I think that the first letter stands for Byzantine. But you get an account number that's, I forget, 12 digits long. And the first 3 tell you whether it's general fund, whether it's water fund, is it police, is it fire? And then the next, actually, police would be general fund, fire would be general fund. And then the next 2 digits tell you give you more information within that. But I have to admit that it took quite a bit of time to be able to read one of those numbers and have it make any kind of sense at all. And I want to go back to it. It's one of those things that this BARS accounting system, I'm sure that there were good and proper reasons for creating it, but it's bureaucratically Byzantine, and it's just very difficult to come up to speed on.
That could be what the B stands for, bureaucratic. Other items from council? So we're going to have some more discussion on this. We'll bring it back both at a committee and a workshop level, if that's okay.
I just wanted to mention that I think it's this Friday morning, and I'm sorry, I have a cold, so my memory of these things is less than perfect at the moment. But the Columbia River Economic Development Council annual economic forecast breakfast is coming up, and I think it's this Friday, and it will be at the Vancouver Hilton. This will be the fourth one that I've been to.
Thank you, Paul. Any other items? Jennifer?
Yeah, I have a quick comment. This is directed, or actually about Mr. Keister's comments regarding the second public comment time that he's been coming in over the past few months talking about, and the fact that we had removed it from our agenda. I noticed on the agenda for Saturday that council agenda is a discussion item. Is that correct? So we'll be discussing this at the planning session on Saturday. That's great. My comment is to Mr. Keister, I have never actually been opposed to reinstituting the second public comment time during the end of our meetings, and I do support an open and transparent governmental process. I also support any opportunity to listen to comments from our citizens, and that is directed towards you, sir. And I imagine if enough council members ask for the second comment time to once again be placed on the agenda, hopefully this will happen.
I had one other quick thing that I forgot. This Thursday, the Chamber of Commerce luncheon begins at 11:30 at Camas Meadows. And the presentation this week will be from our city administrator, David Scott, the city administrator from Camas, Lloyd Halverson, and led by the director at the port, Dave Ripp. And they will be talking about how far we have come toward creating a Camas-Washougal Economic Development Council and what we hope to be able to do with it. So anyone who's interested in the chamber luncheon at Camas Meadows this Thursday.
Any other items from council? Okay, moving into the rest of the agenda, we have a public hearing, Agenda Bill 10-11, the Carroll annexation. Mrs. Boyce.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and council members. Excuse me, I'm taking a moment here. I would like to point out that I laid 2 additional comments that were received on this issue in front of you. It's there's something on, I used both sides of the paper. One was from one of the property owners, Chester Knapp. He actually owns 3 of the pieces there, and he works in Alaska and was unable to attend tonight, but he would like you to read his email, and he's in support of the annexation. The other second comment was from George Johnson. He's also a property owner there, and he wanted this placed in the record. However, this letter really is something that will be directed to the county assessor's office. To answer Mr. Boland's question, although I see that he left, it's my understanding that on the agenda bill, the expenditure required, budget or appropriation required relates to our budget. However, there was cost analysis done in the very beginning of the process, and of course there will be no cost to the city because there are no public services to the properties to serve them. However, we will get some property taxes from the annexation if you approve it. It's not very much. Our portion is very small. Back in June of 2010, R.J. Stevenson told me that the annexation would bring in $2,032 worth of property tax, $55.31 for the police bond, and $258.61 for the EMS levy yearly. This is a request that you hold a public hearing to receive public testimony on the proposed annexation. And then if you desire, I'm recommending that you make a motion to read the ordinance by title only, approving the annexation subject to, and I'll list out 3 things. It's required by the RCWs that these items are listed in the minutes of the meeting. And those items are simultaneous acceptance of the pre-planned City of Washougal zoning, which is residential, our zoning regulations, and comprehensive plan designation, which is urban residential, assumption of all and any portion of existing city indebtedness by the area to be annexed, and assessment and taxation at the same rate and on the same basis as property within the City of Washougal, and also to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Thank you, Joanne. With that, yes.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Joanne, just so the public understands the process, this has been a long process.
Yes, sir.
And if you were to say the most minimum that we've done on it to the most maximum as far as where we're at in the process, are we like in beginning to end? Where are we on that scale so everyone knows?
We're almost at the very end.
Okay, thank you.
Council's decision tonight will be the end of the process for legislative action.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, I will open the public hearing in regards to the Carroll annexation. Ask any members present of the public who wish to speak either for or against the annexation to please come forward to the microphone, give your name and address, and your comments. Second call for anyone who would wish to speak to the item. Steve, this is your chance. Third and final call for anyone that would like to speak on the item. Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing, lost it, and turn the item back to council.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that the ordinance be read by title only.
Seeing no objections, so ordered.
An ordinance annexing property to the City of Washougal known as the Carroll annexation as shown on the attached Exhibit A, which is a map of area to be annexed, and as more particularly described on Exhibit B, which is a legal description of the area to be annexed, both of which are attached hereto and incorporated herein by this reference.
Mr. Mayor, point of order. Is this is this part of our packet? The actual ordinance? Am I missing something?
Scott's looking quickly.
Yeah, it does seem to be missing.
I'm so sorry.
I think the mix-up is that Don English prepared it for me earlier. I sent it to him way in advance, so I apologize for that.
Sorry for not catching that earlier.
Well, so that we have a motion on the floor that we can discuss, I move that we pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
I'll second.
Thank you. While we're waiting for Jennifer to make copies, we do have our city attorney, Don English, is out for a few weeks on some personal leave. In his absence, Scott Russin is stepped forward. Scott's very familiar with the city and has worked for Don for a number of years. But in a little bit of that changeover here in the last week, a couple things got juggled a couple different directions. So,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I rise in support of the agenda bill, the resolution, I should say. But I did want to address a couple of points that were brought up earlier during the public comment period about the annexation. I've had some conversations with some members of the city and elsewhere, some friends of mine, about annexation. And I think those are excellent ideas that the gentleman brought up earlier during public comments about asking about the cost-benefit analysis. It brings up the question of what is the ideal size of the city. I mean, is it necessary always to grow, or is there an ideal size where you say everything's balanced and we're happy with the size of our city, let's not, you know, upset the apple cart anymore? And I think regarding this annexation, it's small enough where my understanding is that if we approve it or if we don't approve it, it's not really going to change the bottom line of the city that much. It does affect the property owners who do want to have the property annexed in. And we certainly haven't had, to my knowledge, any public comments against the annexation process in general or in this case specifically. But with regards to the ideal size of the city, one issue that I think the council is going to have to deliberate on later on this year, potentially, depending on how the economy goes, is asking ourselves the question, are we balanced with how much we bring in tax revenue and how many services that we offer to our constituents, our citizens? At any rate, nothing that's going to stop tonight's agenda bill, but one that I think that we would be wise to continue to keep in our minds when we make budget decisions later on.
And that certainly, well, not only budget decisions, a number of other decisions along the way as well. That's one of the reasons that we're bringing forward some of the strategic planning proposals that we are on Saturday, because certainly that can help drive it. I think one of the biggest things that you all as a council are charged with, and ourselves as a city, is when we look at larger annexations, not necessarily the 1, 2, 3 parcels at a time, but the larger annexations and those that are in the urban growth boundary that potentially could come in, is not only the appropriateness of when those do come in, but what the end usage is proposed to be for those properties. You know, whether it be commercial, whether it be industrial, whether it be additional residential, and being able to balance that. There absolutely, in many, many instances, there are, I believe, valid reasons for cities to not necessarily pass an annexation either. I know years ago, I was on the council over in Camas when we were first approached for all the property up off of Crown Road, what is now Lookout Ridge and all of those areas. And the city staff at the time said, we could certainly annex that. We don't see anywhere in the future where we can adequately serve that, given the type of ground it is and what the use is and that type of stuff. The water, the sewer, everything along the way is going to tax the city to a point where we don't believe it's in the best interest of us annexing that property for that use. And that's when the developers then approached the city of Washougal to do that as well. So there are always those give and takes, and certainly from a staff level, hopefully they're always watching out and having very frank discussions with you as far as the potential use of the property, what it could be under the zoning, that type of stuff, and certainly our ability, which we're bound by, if the annexation goes through, and even the county commissioners are bound to double check our work, that we're actually able to service the area.
Within a reasonable amount of time.
Yep.
And we have a capital facilities plan in place that's intended to serve the area, which would, the property owners would have to extend, or the developers would have to extend from 49th Street.
And I would just observe that in the short time that I've been on council, we actually did turn down an annexation, what we called R Street, and for some of the reasons that have been raised. So it's not by no means an automatic process.
Much more discussion to be had on it, for
right.
sure.
And the other thing is that long before I was ever actually on council, when I was just coming to meetings, the discussion of is there an optimum size for the city? I mean, that discussion goes back years and years and years with frankly, no clear resolution, partially because I think if you think about it a little bit, it's not only limited by total size, but by rate of growth, or maybe even rate of growth. And so it's a complicated question that I'm not sure really lends itself to a formulaic answer.
David?
Once again, Councilman Delabar is stolen the march on me. Thank you. It's a military term that means he got there before I did. And so I will limit my comments to reinforcing what he and what Mr. Boland said, and that is an economic analysis is a good idea here. The question is, what is the benefit to the city and what are the costs to the city? And we've got a general idea of those, but I think a bit more specifics would be helpful in making these types of decisions in the future. I'm not concerned about this one. I think we've got this one pretty well pegged. But I think the idea of a cost-benefit analysis is a good one. And I'd be happy to work with you on designing one that would do the job. Thank you.
Other comments from council? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendations and to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in its usual manner. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Welcome to the city.
Almost. Still has to go to the commissioners. Correct?
No,
No?
goes to the Office of Financial Management, but it's not effective until 5 days after posting a publication anyway.
Okay. Okay, Agenda Bill 1111, proposed increase to the community room rental fees. Mr. Evers or Jennifer, who's going to take this one on?
I'll take it. So staff's done some additional research in regards to fees that we have received as well as who gets charged specifically. There were some concerns around, I believe, Meals on Wheels, Loaves and Fishes, and then some of the functions that the seniors hold over at the community center. So based on the information that we got from the Finance Department, all three of those entities are not charged for utilizing the facility. Also on the agenda bill, you'll see some numbers in regards to what we recognize for revenue, what we held as deposits, and the deposits that were returned. There was no damage in the calendar year of 2010. So just some additional information based on concerns that were raised at the last workshop. Then, of course, the recommendation to raise the individual fees.
Okay.
Mayor, make a unanimous consent to read the ordinance by title only.
Seeing no objection, so ordered.
An ordinance amending Washougal Municipal Code 2.88.040 to increase community room rental fees and cleaning deposit.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to pass, post, and publish in the usual manner.
Second?
I've got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner. Council discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Probably second. Oh.
Okay.
Go. Please follow.
Thank you. Actually, first I'd like to thank the Park Board for their recommendation and for their volunteering their time and their efforts, and it's very much appreciated. However, I'm going to be voting in opposition to this agenda bill this evening. I really do not see a reason to increase the fees. They do seem reasonable to me. The community room is for the community. It's been paid off for quite some time. I don't want to discourage people from using the facility based on the increase in fees. And I do see from the information in the summary statement that folks seem to be respectful of the facility. They're leaving it clean, and there's no cause for retention of their deposits. So at this point, I would not agree to raise the rates.
Yes, as the liaison to the Parks Board, we did evaluate this pretty extensively. And we did a lot of comparables with other cities, and we felt like we were actually still, even with these fees, under most of our neighboring communities for this. And while it's true that the majority of people do leave that room clean, there have been events, like usually birthday parties and things like that, that have taken a lot of time and energy to clean up It's especially difficult if you have back-to-back events. You have to come in on Saturday morning and clean for an event that's going to happen on Saturday afternoon. So I do support this agenda bill item. I do think that the Parks Board was conservative in their changing of the reservation fees, and we're still trying to really keep it affordable to everyone, and that was the key. But you know, we're entering in an era where our city government we have to look at how can we make it pay for itself and become, it's not really revenue neutral, it's always going to cost us in some way, but a little bit more cost effective, and I think this is a way to do it. And I do not recall, I can't remember when we last raised fees for the community room, but it's been a long time.
Thank you. Michael?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I noticed with the summary statement, it says that at this time the city does not charge loaves and fishes and Meals and Wheels for use of the facility. And I was curious if this was possible for us to know that we don't charge them. I mean, we now know that we don't charge them, but I'm taking a look at the code and I don't see that we really have the ability to waive those fees. Am I missing something?
Good question.
I'm not sure that you're missing something, but apparently is historic practice, and I think it's something that needs to be evaluated, but you raise a very good point.
So in that case, it would be a good idea for us to amend the code itself so we're, I mean, certainly the intent behind a community room and with nonprofits here is going to be something along the lines of this is community room, this nonprofit's helping the community, and we're subsidizing that by not charging them these fees, especially since they have multiple events very consistently. And if we do that, if we have a policy like that, it would make sense to allow for the city to have discretion to do that and go through the legal review to see whether we can say, you know, what type of criteria is allowed for that. And I think state constitution allows us to, if I remember correctly, they would allow us to offer the community effort without charge. But the problem is, with what I see with the code, we don't have the legal right not to charge them, from what I can tell. But anyway, that's a separate subject versus what's being voted on tonight, and I yield the floor.
Other comments from council? John?
Mr. Mayor, if you have staff look into that, what Councilman Delavar had just mentioned, I would also add that it would be a good idea for us to see what the other community centers, if they're charging at all, to see what their arrangements are with Loaves and Fishes, because this is in every city. So at least, and most of the time, I think they're in the community centers. So it'd be just good to see comparably if we're not charging and everyone else is, or if half are, it'd just be good information for us to know.
It'd be easy for us to get from Loaves and Fishes themselves directly. So, any other items from council, Dave?
I guess as I read this, the question that comes to my mind, the piece of information I'm lacking is, what do you plan to do with the additional revenue?
Cover expenses for janitorial and for staff. At this point, we're subsidizing with the fees that we currently charge. So it's not a matter of revenue that we would recognize, but cover our costs.
Okay, and how far out of whack is it?
That's on a year-to-year basis, depending on what type of maintenance and repair needs to be done to that specific facility. We've also got restrooms in that facility in between the library, Fort Vancouver, and the community center. But I could get those numbers, but they do fluctuate depending on HVAC, lighting, floor repair, wall repair, things like that, kitchen.
Wouldn't want to put you to that trouble. I just need to know, is it a big problem or a little problem?
Little problem.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to speak in favor of not only Loaves and Fishes, but Meals on Wheels. I observed that the Battleground Community Center kitchen was built specifically to the specifications for Loaves and Fishes Meals on Wheels. That is a community service in some ways on a par with the library. And nobody makes any money at this. Everybody's losing money, and everybody thinks it's important enough to do. So I just want to make sure that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater here.
Okay. Any other comments from council? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Agenda Bill 12-11, reimbursement resolution. Mrs. Forsberg.
This is a, Mayor and council members, this is a reimbursement resolution before you tonight. We are anticipating going out for bonds very shortly. We'll be having workshop sessions on that coming up in the near future. At the recommendation of the FCS group, we are bundling up several utility financing needs into one bond package. So currently the East Street water line project is anticipated to be part of this bond package. So we are making expenditures currently on that project. So this resolution is necessary to be able to reimburse ourselves when the bond funds do come in, as that was the original intent of funding for that project. So this doesn't change any budgetary amounts. It just allows the city the opportunity to reimburse the fund for capital expenditures that are currently being made with future bond funds. So the recommended action is to read the resolution by title only and pass and post it in the usual manner.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we read the resolution by title only.
Seeing no objection, so ordered.
A resolution to allow the city to reimburse previously paid capital project expenditures with bond proceeds.
Mr. Mayor, I move we pass and post the resolution in the usual manner.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner. Council discussion? John?
Let me see if I got this straight. With this reimbursement, we're not just talking about the E Street project. We're talking about maybe wrapping some other bonds into it. Would one of those happen to be the downtown? Can we do that?
No.
No, because that would be mixing
It's a general
a general
bond
versus the revenue bonds for utilities.
Okay. It's come to my attention a little bit how screwy the particular bond is we did get for downtown, as far as the balloon, the interest rates, and so forth. And I really want to draw council's attention to that when you get a chance to take a look at it. Thank you.
Other council comments? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to Agenda Bill 13-11, Personnel Policy, Chapter 27, Auto Usage Policy. Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, before you is a resolution amending Chapter 27 of our personnel policies. In your packet is an underlined strikeout version of Exhibit A referenced by the resolution. We discussed this at our last work session. Essentially, the proposed amendment to the auto usage policy is in Section 27.02, adding a new subsection that would specify that elected officials not be assigned a take-home vehicle. And then there are a handful of cleanup, housekeeping type items that accompany that. So the recommended action this evening is to read the resolution by title only and to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we request unanimous consent to read the resolution by title only.
See no objection, so ordered.
A resolution adopting amendments to the auto usage policy and authorizing its inclusion in the City of Washougal Personnel Policies Manual.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we pass and post this resolution in the usual manner.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to pass and post in the usual manner. Council discussion? David?
I yield to Mr. Russell there.
I was just going to say, Mr. Mayor, I am very pleased with the way that you have been transparent with this issue, that you have brought this before us, that you have taken leadership on this. It's very refreshing to see someone in this position as mayor who owns up to his mistakes and looks to fix them and do right by the taxpayers. And I just want to commend you on this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. David?
I second those comments. I'm impressed with our mayor's performance here. The other thing that came to me as I read all this for the last couple of weeks was, I think we're chasing a gnat with a sledgehammer. And so I will be voting against this tonight because I think it's probably unnecessary, and there are other ways that we could handle this without burdening our code book with more than we've already got. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Other council comments? Mark?
Mr. Mayor, I rise in support of the motion. I had a goal when I first came on the council that I would repeal more laws than I would introduce. And there was once brought up a question about some resolution that I brought forward, which was actually in addition, not just a repeal. And that same comment was brought forward. And the reason why I wanted to move this one and why I don't consider this against my spirit of repealing is that it's a restriction of the power of government, or in this case of elected officials, and still in line, I believe, with the idea of accountability of government and increasing liberty. However, having said that, I yield the floor.
Don't lose sight of that goal.
There's more than one way to restrict the power and the operation of government. It can be done by self-initiated actions. And I think that's the preferred way to do it. And that's the way I would prefer to do it. I don't think I'm in line with my colleagues on this particular point, but we'll see.
Any other council comments? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to pass and post the ordinance in the usual manner. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Okay, going back to three items off the consent agenda. Item number 2, the special council meeting minutes of January 10, 2011. Councilman Delavar.
Mr. Mayor, I think there are a couple of items which were brought to our attention that I think we need to amend on this. And one item would be, well, first off, I guess there needs to be a motion on the floor. Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the Washougal City council minutes for the special meeting January 10th.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Council comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Do you remember what time we called to order the special meeting?
I believe it was 5:35 or thereabouts, just a few minutes after we started the meeting in general.
Because I think we actually started, didn't we do that after public comments that we started the?
Yeah, I believe we only had a couple of comments, so they went fairly quick.
They did go quickly.
And I could be wrong on this. I just think it was just a mistake of procedure. I think according to our press release to the media, we should have started the meeting with the special meeting and not started with the workshop. So I think that's where the misunderstanding has come in. I think it was just a procedural mistake, so.
We could certainly find it on the tape, so.
Well, Mr. Mayor, the reason I ask is because a comment was made to us by email about the calling to order, and both the special meeting minutes and the workshop minutes listed as starting at 5:30. The reason I wanted to amend this part specifically is just to reflect that they were started at different times, and they were considered two separate meetings within the same evening's meetings. So I move that we strike 5:30 p.m. and insert, what was it, 5:45, I think, or 5:40, let's say.
Second.
Was it 5:40? No,
How about 5:37?
How about if we just say the appropriate time, and we'll go back on the tapes and be able to find the timing for you?
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna make a change, I would much rather have it be accurate.
Should we have a motion to table the motion until we can find out the appropriate time?
Second.
Got a motion to table. Any council discussion?
Yes,
Yes.
if I may. Is it not permissible for the mayor who's heading the meeting who's running the meeting to change the order of the agenda? Or because there was a public announcement, are we locked into that?
Mr. Mayor, may I?
I think no matter how we look at it, Dave, even your own council rules are a little bit more relaxed in terms of how we proceed on the workshop agendas and how those are arranged and different things put together. But again, I think it's reflective of the relaxed nature of the workshops themselves. I think the point is, though, when we had two different meetings coming together and not just one of them, that certainly I should have opened one, closed the other, opened one and closed the other, so.
And I'm only speaking because I've actually conducted a special meeting, so I kind of have seen how the laws are written up on this. When the mayor calls a special meeting, and that's sent to the press, the agenda that is submitted for that meeting has to be the agenda that is performed at the meeting, the day of the meeting. So if there were no public comments in the special meeting announcement, there cannot be any special comment or any public comments when the meeting is conducted on that Monday. So for public comment time, yeah, it should have been, in an perfect world, it would have been the special meeting, open, close, open, workshop, public comments, so forth and so on. So procedurally, we just got things mixed around a little.
I just wanted to observe that Honorable Council Member Dietzman from Camas, there's an E in her name.
Yeah.
Okay, any other council comments? I've got a motion and a second to table this item until we get the proper time put in. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carried. Agenda Bill 711, setting a public hearing for the reduced temporary sign review planning application fee. Jennifer? Is that one yours or Dave's?
That one would be mine.
Okay.
I make a motion to are we going to read it? Or- I make a motion to set a public hearing for February 7th, 2011 at 7 p.m.
Second.
for the reduced temporary sign review planning application fee.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Council comments?
Yes. I actually did not pull this bill to make a negative comment. I wanted to make a positive comment. I'm very, very pleased to see a reduction in a fee. And I think it's good for business owners who use the temporary signs. It makes sense to me. It's an excellent example of open communication between the citizens expressing a concern and a need, and the administration listening and providing a solution. Overall, very good job.
Thank you. Any other council comments? David?
Clarification, please. Is this Agenda Bill 9-11?
No, this is 7. Oh, I'm sorry.
7-11.
7-11.
Let's go. How did none of us catch that?
What's that?
The agenda bill on the agenda bill is 711.
I had asked to pull that for comment.
Okay. David, go ahead.
But my comments on
No, I'm
No,
sorry.
we're on
This
the
is
right one.
temporary
We pulled
sign-
711 and
Never
911.
mind.
This is temporary sign reviews.
Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong number 9.
Got it. I didn't hear it. Thank you.
Sign regulations.
Perfect. Any other council comments? I've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now, Agenda Bill 9-11. Set a public hearing, sign regulation amendments. Councilman Shoemaker.
The reason I wanted to pull this one was, just briefly, I was looking through the purposes that this ordinance is supposed to accomplish, and I was struck with the amount of work that goes into this. This was an effort that was going on when I was on the Planning Commission back in the old days, a long time ago, when I was a young man, to show you how far back it was. And we're still struggling with this. But here's my problem, and this goes to the issue of personal freedom. And it also goes to assumptions. I think that the Planning Commission has adopted the language passed by a previous council and Planning Commission, which makes an assumption which I know of no data to back up. And that assumption is that uncontrolled and unlimited signs may degrade the aesthetic attractiveness of the community, which could undermine the economic value of tourism, visitation, and economic growth. That's a bold statement. That's a big statement. A lot of consequences in there for not regulating signs. I'm not aware of any studies that have been done on this. And without that, I'm really reluctant to come in and say, you can't have that sign. I'm generally not in favor of restricting signs in a community the size of Washougal. I don't want our community to look like Highway 99 out there, where there's so many signs that you cannot pick out the sign you're looking for to get to the establishment you want to go to. I don't think we're in danger of that any time in my lifetime, and I plan to live to be 100. So and I'm not going to tell you how long I've got to go on that one. I can't support this one, and I regret that because I worked on this when I was in the Planning Commission, and I was so involved in the details at that time that I didn't see the big picture. And for me, the big picture is personal freedom and unnecessary regulation. And to me, this falls in, this is the worst of both of those cases. Thank you.
Again, just a reminder, Dave, this agenda bill is just setting the public hearing itself so that we can have all those discussions and get into that language and that type of stuff as well, so.
Do we have to?
I think they're asking us to. Molly?
Yes, I definitely am in favor of setting a public hearing. I think it's essential that we hear the views of citizens, and not only citizens, but I have had, you know, not really privately, but people come up to me at meetings who are in the sign industry and on the National Sign Council and different bodies like that. And I was kind of surprised, people that don't even live in Washougal who have told me they've read this proposed sign code. So I'm very eager to hear their feedback on this, since they represent, you know, somebody who is going to actually be generating revenue from signs, is currently generating revenue from signs. But I'm hoping, so I've asked them if they're not able to attend the public hearing to at least let us know by email, these several people. So I'm hoping to get a lot of feedback and maybe a little more clarity in this whole issue. And I was told that actually sign code is one of the thorniest things that there is. It's surprising until you get into the middle of it, but that is the case.
Point of order. Can we get this up on the table? By somebody?
I move that we.
Oh, sorry.
That we set a public hearing to receive public testimony on February 7th.
Second.
Other council comments? Dave?
I agree with Councilmember Costin. I'm anxious to hear what the public has to say. I doubt that it's going to change my mind because I think a lot of people are going to come forward objecting to this. It is a thorny issue, and for the reasons which I mentioned. So I will vote for the public hearing, most definitely. Beyond that, we'll see.
Okay. Any other council comments?
Mr. Mayor? Just very briefly, I do encourage the public to come and give us their opinions about this issue. When it comes to public comments, they are a very insightful part of the whole process, and it very well could lead to us remanding this back to the Planning Commission with recommendations or amending it that night if it's a simple fix. With regards to the specifics of the bill itself, I won't speak to that tonight, although I do have some thoughts, and I'll be discussing that on February 7th. But I look forward to hearing the public comments.
Thank you. Any other council comments?
I would actually propose an amendment. I will be absent that meeting. I will be on vacation. I would very much like to hear what goes on. So I would propose, I move an amendment to change the date from February 7th to February 21st.
Second.
Is that a problem? February 22nd. 22nd, I'm sorry.
Michael, did you second that?
Yes.
Okay. Joanne, does that present any problems for us as far as publications or anything on this? Obviously, we haven't.
I haven't mailed out any agenda bills on it. There have been a couple telephone calls where individuals have asked me when it was proposed to occur. I'll see if I can dig up their numbers and let them know there's been a change.
Okay. And then, depending on what the action is of the council tonight, let's maybe also get it up on the website with correct times. Okay, I've got a motion and a second to amend the agenda bill, changing the date for the public hearing from February 7th to February 22. Any council discussion?
Is it the 22nd?
Monday is President's Day. I believe it's that week.
Okay.
And we meet again on a Tuesday, but I don't know if it is the 22nd.
That's why I carry a day timer still, and I use it. It might be old, but so am I. It is the 22nd. Thank you. Okay, motion and a second. Any other council comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No?
Motion carries. And now we still have a motion and a second on the table in regards to setting the public hearing for February 22nd. Any additional council comments on that motion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No?
Motion carried. That ends our regular agenda. I do want to remind the public of the retreat that we have on Saturday here at the community room. Any other items from council? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second on adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Hey, you probably already know this, but here's the RTC meetings. They're always the first
Dave's still
Tuesday of
polishing
every
it.
month,
I was
4 to
supposed to have
6
them tonight to
p.m.
hand out to everybody.